Hey guys, Jen here with Serenity Hill Farmstead. Today I wanted to talk about herbal books. Now, when you're getting started with herbalism, finding the right books can be really overwhelming and really intimidating because there's so many different options. I think it's pretty common for a lot of people before they really dive in and start doing the expensive courses and things like that, that they want to dip their toes in and see what this herbalism thing is all about. But again, like I said, there's so many books to choose from. Where do you get started? So the things that I'm going to share today are the books that I've used, from some of them from the beginning of my herbalism education journey, and some of them I came across later and wish I would have had them from the beginning. Because a lot of these books, they're fantastic books. There's so many herbalists that publish wonderful books that are super helpful and wonderful information. But they're more geared towards the beginner. A lot of them, not all of them, but there's a lot of them are more geared towards the beginner. And for me personally, if I'm going to be spending money on books, I would rather have something that I'm not going to grow out of. Something that I'm going to reference back and I'm going to use for years to come, no matter what level of herbalism I'm at. So that's what I'm going to share today. I'm going to share a bunch of books that I keep in my herbal library that I constantly reference, that I'm constantly using. A couple of them are new and I haven't had a chance to really dive deep into them, but I have thumbed through and referenced a few things in there and I'm really excited about them. So I've added them to this pile. All of the books that I'm going to list today are linked in the description box below so that you could easily just, one click, go over there and grab the book if you want. Some of these books I found cheaper on a site called Thrift Books. Now, you do have to wait for books a little bit longer on Thrift Books. So if it's something that's like, I really want to get this right now, Amazon's probably your best bet. Some of them are in bookstores or in local bookstores. Some of them are from a different site, but I will put everything down in the description box so you've at least got a good starting place in looking to build your library. So the first one I'm going to share is this book here, The Modern Herbal Dispensatory. This book, a medicine making guide, is well loved. I've used it outside in the garden even. It's well loved. Okay, first, sorry for the weird light. We're going to have to work around it here, but it's just where the sun is. So this book, I love this book. I probably use this more than any other book, which is why I'm starting with it. It's kind of a crash course into herbalism, into using herbs and building your own medicines. There is a nice little introductory Materia Medica in the back. And a Materia Medica, if you're not familiar with what that is basically, it is your herbal dictionary, pretty much. It is, and I'll show you an example. Let's go cilantro, okay? So in this book, you've got cilantro. It's got a little blurb on it here. And then it starts talking about the warnings, energetics, properties. This one shares some sources and where to get your herbs. So the Materia Medica is the thing that I just kind of quick reference in here. If I can't remember something, or if it's not in my personal Materia Medica, or if I'm using a bigger book, but I just want something faster and quicker, this book I always reference. I'm in this so much. Everything in the beginning. Now, this is not going to be like a super detailed how to and teach you all of the things about herbalism. This is why we have multiple books. But it gives you a nice little crash course about the different ways to prepare and use fresh herbs versus dry herbs, harvesting them, talks about making basic extracts, talks about advanced extraction techniques, talks about different preparations, aromatherapy, and flower essences. And it just kind of gives you an overview of a lot of the different things that you use in herbal medicine and gets you started. So this is a fantastic starting point. It's not like super basic, but it is very easy to follow and it's not going to be over your head if you are a total beginner. This book that I'm going to talk about next is The Prescription for Nutritional Healing. You see, we use this one a lot too. And this is the book where if you have anything going on, chronic, acute, whatever, that you want help with naturally, this is the book that you're going to go to. So it's quite the book. And there are many different editions. This is the 5th edition. I don't even know how many editions they have in this book. I will tell you, the higher the edition, the more information there is and the bigger the book is. So let's just look, just to kind of give you an example of one of the things that we would use it for. So I've got people walking in and out of the house, so you're gonna have some background noise here. But I wanna show you how I use this book, and just so you kind of have an idea of how it's, how you would reference it. So let's talk about arthritis, because I have that. So we are going to use me as the example. It talks a lot about, what arthritis is, what it does in the body, the different forms of arthritis. And then it talks on the next page, the nutrition that you are going to want, your nutrients that you are going to want if you do have arthritis. Now, this is not just arthritis. We're not talking just osteoarthritis here. It talks about, on the next page here, look, talks about many different types of arthritis, 2 pages. It is not a complete form, but it has got the most common types of arthritis. It talks about juvenile arthritis, gout, ankylosing spondylitis, which is what I have. It talks about lupus. It talks about bursitis, tendinitis, myofascial pain, carpal tunnel syndrome. So it really goes through everything, or a lot, all the common ones. And I was surprised actually AS was in there, because that's not a common one. So I was surprised. But the way it breaks it down is it's going to give you the nutrients that you're going to need to help support you in that condition. And the way this book works is it tells you the essential nutrients, things that you absolutely have to have in your system to help you support your body with what you're dealing with, in this case, the arthritis. And then it says very important nutrients, and then it goes into helpful nutrients. And then after that, you can see down here, it gets into herbs. And then we've got a whole other second page, or whole other full page on herbs to use. And it talks about, it gives you the information about the herb, how it works in your body. And then it gives you warnings, contraindications, things like that. It does also consider medications. If you are on something that could have a side effect or an interaction with an herb, a prescription, if it would have an interaction or contraindication with an herb, it does make mention of that too. Now, that is not all-inclusive, okay? That's not going to name everything. So you are definitely going to want to check if you are on medication. Still consult your doctor, your pharmacist. Make sure that there are no interactions when you're taking any kind of herbs and supplements with any kind of medications or any underlying health concerns. I just always want to make sure I mention that, because people, when they get into herbalism at first, really not all people have a full understanding and respect of how powerful these herbs are. They're gentle, but they're also very effective. And some herbs are very powerful and could negatively impact your health. And you just want to make sure you have all your information before you just start diving in and taking everything. So really educating yourself, which is the whole purpose of this video. It's making sure you have good information. Accurate information is super, super important. And then it goes through the recommendation section. And for arthritis, it's talking about the different types of food and nutrition I want to make sure that I'm getting in my diet. And there's a whole next section on that for recommendations, talks about medications, over the counter. Yeah, they're loud. And it talks about ways to relieve pain, things you can do in the morning versus at night, things to consider. They do mention the second one in here. It does mention biologic therapy. So biologic therapy for arthritis, this is, I promise I'm not going to go off on this whole rabbit trail, but biologic therapy for autoimmune arthritis is an injectable medication, and it's a really serious medication. It has a lot of side effects. It has a lot of potentially really dangerous side effects. So this is an example of how they're talking about this medication and some things to consider with Western medicine and some treatment approaches, but they're also giving you all of the information on, how to treat things holistically too, and how they interact. So that is why I love this book, is because it gives you all of the information from all sides. When you're talking about chronic illness specifically, you really have a lot to consider and a lot to compare and contrast before you make your decisions on how you're going to treat yourself. So fabulous resource here, just an example of how to use this book. And then you've got basic things in there like constipation, and you've got ear infections, and you've got sinus infections, asthma's in here, ADHD is in here, like everything is in here. There's so much. Fabulous, fabulous book. The next book I'm going to share is a little more technical. This Medical Herbalism, and it's a little more expensive too, but worth every penny in my opinion. Now this might be for someone that's a little more advanced, but if you are getting into herbalism with the intention of, being able to really help yourself, your family, or maybe practice later on and help other people, this is a super, super valuable book. So this will talk to you. Well, first I want to tell you, the way they break this book up is probably my favorite thing about this book. They break it up into body systems, which is actually the way I learn herbalism. And maybe that's because my roots are actually in Western medicine. This book just makes sense to me. All right, we're going to take this off because those things drive me insane. All right, but I just want to show you here how this book is set up. So like your digestive system, and it talks about a lot of the different conditions that you would deal with in your digestive system and how to treat them. And it also gives you recipes, and these are not, gonna be one size fits all. Herbalism is not a one size fits all, just like any kind of medicine is not a one size fits all. But it's a good place to start and to give you an idea of where you can start. It gives you, just because we opened to hypertension, okay, it gives you all the different actions that you would want for someone that is dealing with hypertension. And then all these possible herbs that would fit into each one of those actions. And then if you notice, they're all in Latin. There is translation in the back of the book, along with a very nice Materia Medica. Most educational herbals like this are going to have some type of Materia Medica in the back to give you more information on the herbs they're mentioning throughout the book. But when you're making a Materia Medica, and that would be in another video, walking through how I could share mine, how I make mine. But when you're making a Materia Medica, I feel like that's from your experience and from your practice. So there's going to be some finite things about these herbs, like what they look like, how they act. In mine, because we have an herb farm, I have best farming practice for those herbs, how to start them, what kind of soil they like, what kind of temperatures they like, what their growing season is. When I would harvest, when I have to plant, all of that information is in mine in a little subsection. And then how I'm using them, how I have used them, what I've noticed about them, how they interact with other herbs, all of the information that you gather from your practice and just your experience, experimenting with them and using them. You want to put all that in your Materia Medica because you're building your herbal, your personal herbal, your personal reference book. But when you're getting started, all of these books have Materia Medicas in them, so you have something to reference. If you are going to be doing any kind of wild medicinal foraging, harvesting, you want to know what you're looking at. So the Peterson Field Guide, and you'll notice that this is mentioning Eastern and Central North America because that's our region. Well, we're actually in the Midwest, but Eastern is pertinent too. I do have a Midwest one too. I just don't know where I put it. There are a lot of plant identifying books. Please get Peterson, and this is why. Look at the pictures. You can see the plant, you can see the texture, and there's way better descriptions, and they're way more accurate, and they mention the Latin name, which is super, super, super important in herbalism. Lavender, there are many forms of lavender, like many forms of lavender. So if you're talking about making a medicine, you want to make sure you are getting the correct lavender. So that's why we identify them by Latin name. There's one book that we have, and I think it's Foraging for Kids, and it's a great book for foraging for kids. However, it does not have these kinds of pictures. They're like black and white hand drawings. And that's not going to be helpful when you are out in the wild and you're like, okay, but what color green is this supposed to be? Or, maybe the person that made the hand drawing didn't serrate the leaf as well as they should have. And then you are facing a leaf that looks kind of curved, but not really serrated, but you're not really sure. That's dangerous when you're talking about foraging, either for food or for medicines. It's very dangerous. So having a very good quality foraging book, field guide, super, super important. Now, even though I use this, I also use an app, and I will put the app that I use down in there. It's a plant ID app. I can't remember the name of it to save my life right now, but I'll put it down in there. It is a paid app, but you can get out of it just by hitting the X in the corner. That's it, and you don't have to pay for it. The next book I'm going to talk about is the Herbal Medic. If you are into medical preparedness at all, which if you've been around for any length of time or you follow me on Instagram, I have a passion for medical preparedness. And this book was created by a former Green Beret, see, Green Beret's guy, who was raised by an herbalist. He knows what he's talking about. And this book is fabulous. It's fabulous. There are so many different sections on here. He even mentions a section on COVID, which was super helpful for us. When you have possible exposure, onset of symptoms confirmed, and recovering. So we are still using this because I am still recovering. And he has it set up in a kind of like situations that you would deal with. So he talks about herbal first aid, skills that you would need, things that could happen. So like going through shock, wounds, burns, fractures, environmental injuries, venoms and poisons, bacterial infections, eyes, nose, throat, acute care, childbirth. It goes through all of that. And then he's got a Materia Medica in the back also. And I really like the way he has his set up. It's very easy to read, to follow. And yeah, it's a super, super valuable book. You can also follow him on Instagram. The next two books I'm talking about are Where I Get My Seeds From. This, I believe the guy that wrote these books is the founder of Strictly Medicinal Seeds. I could be wrong, but for some reason, I want to say he was the founder. Rico Ketch. I really hope I'm not totally butchering his name. If so, I'm sorry. But his books are wonderful. So Making Plant Medicine, this is absolutely fabulous. I love the way he writes too. Like he gives you information and then you get a story. This man is just like, you can tell he's a natural born storyteller. So let's talk about goldenrod. That is one that we use all the time and that we wildcraft. So it gives you all this information on goldenrod, tincturing fresh herb, tincturing wild herb, using water extracts, talks about dosages, contraindications. It gives you a bunch of information. And I keep saying everything is a wonderful book, but they are. I wouldn't be mentioning them if they were not wonderful books. So you can see this one's pretty new. I haven't used it a ton, but I have been referencing it more and more. I've been finding some of the things that were not in, where is it? This book are in this book. Oh, there's a huge section on garlic in here. This is lovely. And he gets really, look at this whole section on making garlic ear oil. Great for ear infections and ear pain. Great book. So this one, not available on Amazon. This next one I'm about to mention too. This you're going to have to get directly from Strictly Medicinal Seeds. Going into this one, which is Growing Plant Medicine. And I love this book. I love it for farming purposes. Same author, same company. Actually, maybe it's his wife that's helping him with this book also. There is a lot of just kind of like hand artwork. Like they just drew it. I'm trying to find, let's see, when they start talking about gardening setup, garden design. There we go. Here's an example. So they give some examples on how to set up your different types of gardens. This is a forest in the eastern part of the country. Tropical medicinal garden. And then they talk about different farming techniques, the different zones, the different herbs that thrive in those zones. It is a fabulous resource if you're wanting to get into growing your own medicine, because there is not a lot of information out there on medicinal herb growing. You can find vegetable gardening everywhere. You can search YouTube and you have hundreds and hundreds of videos of how to grow a tomato, but you can't find as many things, especially pertinent to your zone, on growing medicinal herbs. So this is a fabulous resource book if you want to get into growing your own medicinal herbs. The last book I'm going to talk about is the book that you really want to go ahead and get your hands on if you are going to be making your medicine. It talks about your kitchen pharmacy and your equipment, touches a little bit on gardening, harvesting, drying, storing herbs, things like that. So it talks about forms of herbal medicine, infusions, decoctions, hydrosols, flower essences, tincturing by maceration, tincturing by percolation, wine infusion, vinegar infusion, glycerin infusion, oil infusions. It goes on and on and on. If you really want to get into serious medicine making, not just for you, but for your family and maybe for clients, this is the book that you definitely want to have. Go through it, mark it up, really make it your own. I put notes in mine. Like, I really made this a personal book. But for the herbal medicine maker, this book is definitely a must-have. And those are my book recommendations. Now, this is not my entire herbal library. I have many. I have some there. I have some there. I've got some in my bedroom. I've got some in the TV stand because I ran out of bookshelf space. They're everywhere and they all serve their own purpose. And a lot of the herbals that I have experience with, they touch on things that cross over into other books, like the Medicine Maker's book touches on gardening. But my real gardening book that I'm reaching for is this one. Oh, I forgot to mention too, there are multiple volumes of this. This one is volume 1. He is working on volume 2, or it's like about to come out or something. Because this book right here, I think only goes to like G or H or something. Yeah, so we need the rest of them. I will be first in line to get these books. I'm super excited for those. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful in trying to figure out where to start if you're just getting started with herbalism, or maybe you want to just expand your library and touch on a few other different topics. I hope this was helpful for you. Remember, all of those links are right there in the description box, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.